What's up, Flanniverse? We're here for Monday Night Football of Week 14. This is the final game of the regular season for best ball for most fantasy seasons. So pretty fun. A lot going on. Of course, we're going to be talking about the DFS angle, which is probably the least fun angle for this game at this point, just because, I guess it depends on if you're still active in your leagues, but if you have any kind of sweat in any other league, that's the most exciting thing going on right now in best ball, season long, etc. We're going to be talking about this from a DFS angle, of course, as usual, going position by position: quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, defenses, kickers. I am here with Adam, ShipMyMoney, Scherer, to break the whole thing down from a usage standpoint, from a defensive matchup standpoint, etc., etc. Adam, before we get into the game, like I said, this is the final game of the best ball season. Do you have any big sweats there?
Not that I've noticed. The only season-long league I did, I already wrapped up by like 2 weeks ago, so it doesn't matter. I'm probably gonna lose like 3 of my second place DraftKings teams, but like they're not really sweats. They're just, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I don't think I went through and looked actually at Underdog. But like, yeah, I mean, I had a couple that were like, oh, I could, advance the third place team, but for the most part, everything I've looked at is pretty much wrapped up.
Yeah. I actually do have several sweats, like looking through my DraftKings. Like I went through all of my teams that appeared to have sweats. So like every team that I'm in the lead, there's 1 or 2 that I'm definitely going to lose that I'm currently advancing, and then a few that I could potentially pick up. But some of them, it's like, if AJ Brown gets 40 points, I could catch up in this one. Some of them it is more realistic. But yeah, I don't have a ton of big sweats. And then on Underdog, I actually do have some. I'm looking at BBMDB. This is the first week that I, at least like in terms of the expected advance rate, have finally gone back up after it's been like every single week. Same thing as last year. Last year was like when they started doing on BBMDB, they started doing sims of the rest of the season. And when they started doing it, was like, all right, you're going to advance 23 teams. And then the next week it was 19. And then finally I advanced 14 teams last year. It was just like everything went wrong at the end of the year. It's been kind of the same thing this year, where it was like 30, 29, 28, 27. And then finally it's back up to potentially advancing 30 BBM teams, which I would take at this point. I'd be pretty excited about that. But
I think I did forget to go and look, because I know overall on Underdog I have like a 25% advance rate. In BBM I think I'm like 21%, but I didn't actually go through and see if all of my seconds were going to hold. I was a little concerned that this week was going to be like a bloodbath for me, because a lot of the reason I have good teams is Drake May and Jackson Dart, and then they're not, and Rico Dowdle. But at least so far it hasn't been quite as bad as I thought.
Yeah, I actually had the same thing, because I'm like, okay, my highest drafted player overall, I think, is Jalen Coker, who's on by. Not like he's that impactful, but it's like I have a ton of Jalen Coker, Tedero McMillan. I've got a ton of Jawan Jennings. I think he's George Kittle to some extent. And then, Jackson Dart. Cam Scadoo already out, so that one doesn't really affect me. And then I'm forgetting the final, but it's like I have a ton of
McCaffrey was out.
Yeah, McCaffrey, which I actually have a lot in BBM. So yeah, it was not ideal for buys. I had like an awesome, I thought I could potentially have an awesome week this week, because I have a ton of Tony Pollard, and like he's done nothing all year, but he finally had his blow up game. And I have a ton of Harold Fannin and a ton of Brock Bauer. So I was like, oh shit, I'm like week 14, I'm finally gonna like skyrocket up. And no, it's not like, doesn't offset all the buys. I'm like still probably gonna lose advance rate overall this week, but it is what it is. Do you have any major takeaways from the best ball season before we get into DFS? Do you have any like things you plan on changing for next year or anything?
No, probably the same approach as usual. Tell everyone that talks about best ball that they're idiots. Do the opposite of what they do, and try and draft like better early round players. Like you and I have talked about it. Like I've hit on like solid late round picks every single year I've done best ball, but it's just like I never happen to have like a ton of JSN or Puka or Jonathan. I'm overweight on Jonathan Taylor on Underdog, but not on DraftKings. Like my like actual good players that I draft always just end up being like average or bad. So I'm going to try and change that.
I think my biggest takeaway looking through my teams right now, they're advancing, like the ones that I'm most excited about are always like you have at least 2 elite running backs and then other like viable running backs, which I've historically done a lot of zero RB, and part of it is like I have to look through it and decide, like, is that because I do so much zero RB that like when I have elite running backs, it's because I usually hit on somebody later on or something. But like a lot of the teams where it's like, oh, I started with Achane and McCaffrey or something, it's like, oh, I love that.
Well, I mean, the tough part with, and it's kind of my overriding point every offseason when there's all this analysis, is like it's so much is dependent on what happened in that one season. Like you're going to, if you look back at this year, you're gonna like earlier on running backs gonna look really good because Gibbs was a smash, Bijan's been great, Taylor was great, Achan was great. None of them got hurt.
Yep. CMC.
CMC. So like there's that. To me, the biggest takeaway, and I think it's part of the reason that I kind of seemed I was probably a little bit more aggressive on running backs this year. To me, the biggest change in zero RB is how much rookies are getting pushed up now. Like when zero RB became a thing, you could get like Tootin in the 14th round or whatever. When you move all those guys to like round 8, then it starts to become more appealing to just draft the actual like number 1 running back.
And I think I would get a fell for it again award this year because I went a lot more zero RB because to me it was like everybody kept talking about this running back draft class was like one of the best that we've had in decades. Like this is just an elite rookie running back draft class. So I was like, all right, I'm going to draft a ton of the late round rookie running backs. I'm likely to hit on some of these guys. Apparently, like somebody's going to break out from this. And then I looked through my rookie running back exposure. I drafted one of Omar in Hampton, so that was just like kind of bad luck. Other people might argue that I was about to get lucky because Najee Harris got hurt and then didn't get lucky. I know you would argue that, but I think he was looking like a smash. He was looking awesome, and then he got hurt. But then it's like a lot of the rookie running backs I drafted was like in the final rounds of the draft. I was making the decision between like Taj Brooks and Jarquez Hunter and Brashard Smith and just like all of these rookie running backs DJ Giddens, who did absolutely nothing all year. And I could have just been drafting Woody Marks and Kyle Monungai, but like they didn't grade out well in like, prospect stuff. It was like, these guys are just not that good of running backs. So I was like, what's really the upside there? I don't know. So I don't know if I just like didn't hit on the right running backs or if it's just like, maybe you're right about not drafting so many rookies.
Well, and I will say like, I mean, obviously it's been fun for me to try and, kind of victory lap the rookie running back thing, even though half the people that they think they still did well with rookie running backs somehow. I don't know how, but like they did get really unlucky because like you make the talent argument. And my kind of argument there was like always that, yeah, maybe they're talented, but like the coaching staff still has to put them on the field and they're not going to because they probably can't block. They still have, like ETN or Swift or whoever is going to be involved. But like the rookie running back people did run bad on nobody got hurt.
Yeah.
Like I think the talent argument thing is like, if ETN gets hurt, we think Tootin's going to be really good and he's not just going to be like some other guy. Like Scattaboo, he benefited from Tyrone Tracy getting hurt. Like that got his foot in the door and then he just didn't give it back. Same thing with Hampton. Like I think clearly Hampton and Harris was going to be a timeshare, but Harris got hurt. Hampton ran with it. Like, but outside of Hampton and Tracy getting banged up, like none of the rookie running backs actually benefited from somebody getting hurt.
Right. I mean, I guess RJ Harvey at this point too with Jake.
RJ Harvey.
But it took most.
RJ Harvey was never Henderson. I mean, Henderson's the perfect example of like the entire arc. Like Stevenson, he's splitting with Stevenson. It's pissing everybody off. Stevenson gets hurt. Henderson does really well because he's good. Stevenson comes back, and the coaching staff is like, "Yeah, we don't fucking care. It's still Stevenson."
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's just a tough. I mean, it's like obviously in hindsight we can. I don't know. I can think about like, oh, I should have changed this or I should have changed this, but it's still like going into next year, we just don't know who's going to get hurt. Like you said, it's like so much is dependent on who ends up getting hurt. And 2 years in a row now, we just have not had that many early round running back injuries. And then we have like Malik Neighbors actually did get hurt, which is like, he's like one of the least players I would have least expected to get hurt being a young.
I assume wide receivers are just going to be free next year.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Like the combination of people, because you're going to have people still pushing up rookies for all the reasons that they still do. Like I said, they ran bad this year. The idea is still solid enough, even though I think it's gone too far. Like, so you're going to have those people pushing them up, but then you're going to have the people being like, well, 2 years in a row, you've had to go early running back. Like, I think wide receivers are just you're going to get so many good wide receivers in like the mid-range next year.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how things are definitely going to change. But it'll be interesting to see how. Anyway, I know people did show up here to talk about DFS, so we can talk about some DFS. I do think this is going to be kind of a relatively quick show, just because we don't have to talk about like 6-string wide receivers like we do on like last night's slate was so brutal with Kansas City, Houston. Like you have to talk about 12 different wide receivers. We don't really have to do that on this slate, so that'll save us some time. Quarterback. We'll start with the quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts, 10,600 projected for 37% flex ownership, 23% captain ownership. Using those, I got 55% in the flex, 7% at captain. So according to the Sims, looks like he's going a little bit over owned at captain, under owned in the flex. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, and I think part of it is I think our captain ownership might be a little bit high at 23%. But I got 53% at flex. I got 4% at captain. So with those numbers, I'm under the field at captain, over the field at flex. But the biggest takeaway for me, I think, at this point, when you're working with ownership early in the day, is we have 60% combined ownership projected to Jalen Hurts. I have 57%. How it's split up, I think, will obviously vary on how ownership is being projected. Right now we have a 51% chance of Hurts being optimal at flex, only 37% owned. So I'm over the field at flex. We have him 10% to be optimal at captain, but projected for 23%. Obviously, I'm going to be under at captain, but I think it's also likely that you see that flex ownership come up, that captain ownership come down, and I end up, just probably pretty close to the field because overall, I am very, very close to the field on how much Hurts I have.
Okay. Yeah, and Hurts, as far as the matchup goes, the Chargers a tougher matchup just overall than I thought they were. I thought it was kind of a defense that was okay to attack, and that is not what the numbers are showing, at least in terms of schedule adjusted over the last 5. Looks like it's a bottom 10 or so matchup for quarterbacks against the Chargers. Haven't looked at pass rate over expectation, but I assume it's pretty low for the Eagles. As far as stacking Hurts, I'm assuming you can play him anywhere in your lineup without any pass catchers. I'm guessing the Sims will give you some unstacked Hurts. Typically, probably still want some like a pass catcher, at least when you have him a captain, but I haven't looked at that. Have you looked at how you're getting stacked with Jalen Hurts?
So when he's a captain, I definitely still have pass catchers, it looks like. Again, like I guess you don't have to. I mean, you could. The theory, if you didn't, would be that, it's just kind of an ugly, lowish scoring game, but Hurts like scores 2 rushing touchdowns or something. But still primarily getting him with pass catchers. And that's mostly the case when he's at flex, not always. But I think that's still, it's not that you have to have Hurts with a pass catcher. It's that I do want to still get a good amount of, Barkley, Brown, Smith, Goddard, just because they're good.
Yeah, right. So it's, I mean, typically you're just going to get some of those pass catchers anyway. Yeah, it looks like I'm getting to a lot of pass catchers. I was kind of curious about it just because with Hurts, people make the argument all the time, like you actually want Hurts without pass catchers. A lot of people will tell you because usually his spike weeks come from multiple rushing touchdowns. So then like it doesn't bring along pass catchers. But like you said, it's like just based on the dynamics of a single game slate, you're going to have a stack regardless most of the time. So I think that makes sense. Justin Herbert, let's see, is 10,000, so only $600 less expensive than Jalen Hurts, projected for 44% flex ownership, 6% captain ownership. I'm overweight in both spots, getting to 50% at flex, 11% at captain for Herbert. Again, not a great spot. It is a bottom 7 or so matchup for quarterbacks against the Eagles over the past 5 weeks. We've seen the Eagles shutting down some good offenses. How much are you getting to of Justin Herbert?
Yeah, it's very similar to Hurts, 50% at flex, 9% at captain. So right now I have more at captain than I do Hurts. But again, that just, I think, has to do with Hurts' projected ownership. 50% total projected ownership coming into Herbert. I have 59%. We have him with a 10% chance of being optimal at captain. That's about the same as Jalen Hurts. 46% to be optimal at flex. That's slightly behind Hurts, but still very close. You do get some rushing upside with Herbert as well. You don't get the same sort of touchdown equity that you do with Jalen Hurts, since Jalen Hurts has an entire play designed to him getting touchdowns, but Herbert does still give you some rushing upside. Obviously, he's a solid quarterback. His passing yard projection is like 20 points or so higher than Hurts, so relatively comparable there as well.
Einstein asks, any lean on how the offense may look different with Sirianni involved in the offensive game plan? I don't have any kind of lean on how Sirianni might change things up for the offense. I guess maybe they run more. Do you have any thoughts here?
No, I mean, my thought was actually maybe they actually throw more.
I mean, I guess they've been running like as much as possible,
yeah.
So I guess there's not a lot of room to go up in terms.
Yeah,
of
I mean, to me, the obvious, like, if you're going to change the thing that people have bitched about all year, it's that they're going to actually use AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. One thing that was interesting, and it doesn't have to do with Sirianni, obviously, but like one question mark, and we'll get to it later, but Grant Calcaterra was barely running routes last week, and neither did Kylan Granson. And so, like, as a result, they had another wide receiver on the field more often, which is unusual for them. But again, like, I don't necessarily think that has anything to do with Sirianni or that it's even sticky week over week.
Yeah. I got the question, how many times have both Hurts and Barkley been viable this year in the same lineup? I'll pull that up because it's easy enough to do here with the fantasy points scored report
For
the
Showdown,
Eagles.
I would assume a ton.
Yeah, I would think, but I mean, we just haven't had Barkley actually viable that often. I mean, week one, depends on what you consider viable, but for Showdown, I would think week one looks viable. 24 for Hurts, 18 for Barkley. Week 4, maybe 19.4 for Hurts, 17.4 for Barkley. Week 5, maybe 19.5 and 17.8. Week 8, definitely 25.4 for Hurts, 33.4 for Barkley. Maybe week 12. I don't know. So, I mean, several times for as far as Showdown goes. All right. Should we move on to running backs? Anything else to say about, as far as stacking with Herbert, I would assume we're always stacking up Herbert.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, again, like he'll run some, but he doesn't give you the same rushing touchdown equity.
Yeah. Also, a good question. Any concern about Herbert's hand injury? Are we doing anything with that? Like, I don't think we're going to go to like the backup quarterback or anything.
I don't know what you do with it. I mean, it's not his throwing hand, right?
Right.
Like the only, I mean, I have no idea how you would change like a projection for that unless you just wanted to say like he's going to take one snap and be like, just kidding, can't do this.
Yeah, which I mean, he's been practicing. I'd be pretty surprised if he could re-aggravate it. There's always that risk. Like sometimes opposing teams will like sort of attack an injury. They know you're hurt on that hand. They're maybe
Neil, like when they might throw him down on his arm during an interception return.
Are you talking about Jaden Daniels?
Yes.
Listen,
and your Vikings,
yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, exactly. kind of, yes, exactly like that. Certainly plausible that they attack the hand a little bit more. So if you wanted to go underweight on Justin Herbert under that theory, I guess you could, but it's single game. I don't think I'm not planning on doing anything with it. I think Herbert still a strong play, and I haven't looked at I'm trying to figure out. I think they have a bad backup quarterback, but I don't remember who it is.
Is it Trey Lance?
Oh, it is Trey Lance. Okay. Yeah. I was thinking it was Kenny Pickett, but he's on the Steelers or I don't know. Trey Lance. That's interesting. What's the price tag on? I mean, if he's cheap enough, if he's like 6,000, sure, you can throw in a little Trey Lance if you want, but I don't think I'm playing it, doing anything with the hand. Before we move on to running backs, I did see people.
He's 8K.
Oh, 8K. That's kind of tough. Like he would need like a first quarter injury. Yeah. He does, he runs a bit and all that, but I don't know.
People need a first quarter injury and then him also to not play like Trey Lance.
Yeah, also true. Interesting. Spelkowski says they've been working on some Trey Lance packages this week, so I guess it could hurt. Could hurt Justin Herbert a bit, but I don't think there's much we can do with it. I am. People were talking about in chat. I am going to be in traveling starting on Thursday, so I'm not going to be doing a pre-lock show on Thursday. Adam is going to be doing a show at some point during on Thursday.
Probably like this time slot.
Okay, so around the same time on Thursday, Adam will be doing a show that'll be here in the Flaniverse. I don't know. Are you also going to do it on the Run the Sims channel?
Yeah.
Regardless, yeah, he'll be streaming it to both the Flaniverse and Run the Sims, so you can catch Adam's breakdown on Thursday. Same thing on Monday. I won't be doing a show before lock. I will be on an airplane when I would normally be doing it. So it'll be Adam breaking it down by himself on Monday, and then no pre-lock shows. So wanted to make sure we still have something out there for people on Thursday and Monday, but I'm not going to be doing anything pre-lock on those days. On Sunday, I have not figured out what I'm doing. I might try to pre-record a video or something. The normal before lock time is like right in the middle of the Fantasy Football World Championship, and I'll be wanting to cheer on Shady Advice, who graciously invited me. So I don't know. Maybe I'll get away and do a stream. Maybe I'll pre-record something. Not sure exactly what I'll do, but I'm planning to get something out on the channel on Sunday. It's just going to be less stuff, not live before lock on Thursday or Monday. So that's how things are going to look a little bit different this week. And then I'll be back next Thursday. We'll be back to the regular schedule. All right. Moving on to running backs. Running backs is a little bit complicated. So we can start with a less complicated side, that being the Eagles. Saquon Barkley is 9,600, projected for 36% flex ownership, 20% captain ownership. I'm getting overweight at both 46% in the flex, 22% at captain. Barkley, like one of the few plays that you can feel pretty confident in on this slate? Are you also getting into a lot of Barkley?
Yeah, 22% of captains. That's very close to captain ownership. 49% at flex is a bit higher than the field. We have him 41% to be optimal at flex, 17.5 at captain. So not like going super under-owned, but at flex a little bit under-owned. So I am getting to him. The $9,600 price tag just looks good. Like obviously he hasn't given you the same explosive plays that he did last year, but he's still clearly the number one running back here, and there's nobody remotely close. It's not like they've started to take workload away and give some to Tank Bigsby. You could argue maybe they should, but they haven't. I mean, I guess that's like a whole separate angle you could take if you wanted to on this slate, but it hasn't happened. Shipley, same thing. It seems like Bigsby's ahead of him as far as rushing goes, and then Shipley, probably more used as a pass catching back. We saw that some last week, but like we haven't seen any actual indication in a game that they plan on actually splitting carries at all whatsoever, other than Jalen Hurts. So with the information we have, like you still have to just view Saquon as the clear number one here. Again, if you want to say, well, if he does start splitting carries at some point, there is going to be a first week that it happens, and maybe it'll be this week. Like obviously, you could make that case and mix in some Tank Bigsby or whatever. But from a projection standpoint, it's just all Barkley still.
I was not listening to the first part of what you said on why would they be splitting carries to Barkley. What's your reasoning there?
He stinks and Tank Bigsby's
okay. Okay, I thought it was like maybe they want to rest him some or something like that.
No.
Okay, it seems unlikely to me, just given that he they won the Super Bowl with him. Like they're just from the coach's standpoint. But you're right. Like maybe if Tank Bigsby has been just as good, Sirianni changing up who's doing the play calling could make a difference there, or if he takes on more of an active role. Yeah, I guess that. But
also because I know you weren't listening, what I said was maybe that is something you could argue that they should do, but they have shown no indication.
Yeah, that is what you said. Okay, yeah. Yes, right. Agreed, agreed with all of that. Barkley, pretty elite workload still over the past 4 weeks. 71 carries, 15 targets. Not like not like Christian McCaffrey elite, but fairly elite, just under 4 targets per game. And then Shipley and Bigsby, it's 4 carries for Shipley, 8 for Bigsby over the past 4 games. 3 targets for Shipley, none for Bigsby. Bigsby neither of them really running a ton of routes, but 13% for Shipley. 2,600 for Bigsby, 2,000 for Shipley, 2% ownership for Shipley, 1% for Bigsby. I always like playing the backup running back angle. I don't know who I would rather play though of these two. Do you have like a preference between Bigsby and Shipley?
I'm not getting to either one. I think my preference would be Bigsby, just with the assumption that if Barkley gets hurt, I think Bigsby is the next guy up in terms of getting the bulk of the rushing workload. And also, if you do assign like a greater than 0% chance that we get any sort of a split backfield, not saying like down the middle or anything, but even if it becomes like 80-20 in terms of rushing market share, I think it's Bigsby that is on the 20% end there and not Shipley. Again, I'm not positive there, but I think that Bigsby is like the next running back up. So I would give the edge to Bigsby, but that being said, I personally right now don't have either one of them. Yeah.
And like Shipley being involved in the passing game, I guess like sort of a better standalone role from what we've seen, just because passing is worth more. So I guess that's the argument for Shipley. But yeah, if you think Bigsby is more likely to, like, if they were going to split it more, probably be Bigsby getting that and in case of an injury. So probably Bigsby would be my preference.
And the other thing is that, like, yeah, obviously receptions are worth more, but like, it's not like Shipley has a real third down rule. Like 9%, 16%, 9%, 21% route participation in the last 4 weeks. It's like, yeah, I guess if Barkley gets hurt, then Shipley's going to be the one on the field on passing downs. But it's not like he has like much of a standalone role there anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, I think like because neither of them really has much of a standalone role, and there's like more contingent upside for Bigsby. Bigsby would be my preference between the two of them. I'll probably get to some Bigsby just because it's my whole personality is playing backup running backs. So I'll play some of the backup running back. But I'll probably play more of Bigsby than Shipley. And then on the other side, by the way, I agree with going back to the Trey Lance thing. I agree with Ted's point that like it could potentially hurt Herbert. Like if you want to use that as a reason to play less Herbert, I think that's reasonable. If you think he's like they're going to bring in Trey Lance in the red zone because they want to have dual threat or something.
Yeah, I'll say like you could argue that it hurts the running backs too.
Yeah.
But like I go back and forth through it when we get this all the time. You know, like so and so backup quarterback has a package in practice, and you never see the guy. Trey Lance has probably been that guy like 100 times over the course of his career, and you never see him.
Exactly.
I saw somebody say that most sites haven't projected. I've looked at some that do. I've looked at some that don't. But even the ones that do, it's for like half a fantasy point.
Right. It's not like they're projecting for a real score. Yeah, it's not enough for me to like be too scared off of Herbert or the running backs. But yeah, I mean, I think that is something if you want to factor it in.
Yeah, it's one of those where like, would I if I'm playing a lot of Justin Herbert, would I prefer that Trey Lance's name was not mentioned at all this week? Like, yeah, but it's still just not really going to do much to anything.
Could be Travis asked, did you notice that Stingley has, PFF has Stingley ranked 60 out of 101 corners? I mean, I think they're like typically directionally accurate, but like there's going to be some misses there. I don't know. I don't pay that close of attention to PFF stuff, except for when it's like a player's in or out of the lineup, or like I'm looking at something specific, I guess. Do you look closely at PFF?
I pay zero attention to PFF grades. I think they're really funny. The only time that I do think they're important is that last year they had Chris Rodriguez as a top 5 running back in the NFL.
And that got you to convince me to draft Chris Rodriguez.
Yeah. They also at one point this year, to the point of, no, I don't pay attention or care about them, had Bill as the number 1 running back.
All right. Yeah. I don't pay a ton of attention to PFF. I'll do it like from occasion when it's like, okay, this defensive player is out. And I'm like, I don't really know anything about him. And it's a showdown slate. I'll look to see, like, is he good against the run? Is he good against the pass? Like, what is the like theoretical change? Like when Quinnen Williams was traded, it was like, oh, he's like elite in terms of stopping the run. So
I do that too. But then I also realize that like it's probably 50-50 whether it's even accurate.
Right. I mean, I think it's more likely than not. Again, I think it's like directionally accurate most of the time, but I don't pay like super close attention to PFF grades. All right. So on the other side,
anytime you're grading somebody on whether or not they're doing what they're supposed to do, and you have no fucking idea what they're supposed to do,
what the coaches are asking them to do,
it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe easier for like receivers, I would think. I mean, you still don't know.
I don't think so. You get DeAndre Hopkins top 10 because the dude gets open or something. Like,
I mean, DeAndre Hopkins is a top 10 receiver. That's the reason there.
A decade ago, when I started playing DFS, DeAndre Hopkins was the top 10 receiver.
I love DeAndre Hopkins. He won me the Millie. He was the final catch to win the Millie for me. So I'll always have a soft spot for DeAndre Hopkins. He also has like, when he doesn't play that much these days, but when he does play, like he earns targets and stuff. I haven't looked at his stats, but early on in the year, at least he was like making a highlight play. He was like the Isaac Tesla of old guys.
Yeah,
making a highlight play on every single pass.
He runs routes on like half their dropbacks and he gets targeted like once or twice.
Yeah, exactly. All right. On the Chargers side, it is more complicated because nobody really knows what's going to happen with the Chargers. We have Kamani Vidal at 7,400, Omarion Hampton at 7,800. Kamani Vidal projected for 2% flex ownership, none at captain. Omarion Hampton projected for 34% flex ownership, 10% at captain. This is obviously what I'm getting right now is going to change significantly when ownership is updated. Because I'm getting to all of the Kamani Vidal right now. I'm getting to 24% Omarion Hampton. I assume you're on the same page as me that ultimately Kamani Vidal is not going to get just 2% cap ownership overall, and that's going to change things drastically.
Yeah, so I think he's going to end up getting like 10 to 20% ownership. I think there's still a very interesting and like difficult conversation around exactly how to project Hampton and Vidal. And I don't necessarily think there's a right answer. Like I can argue, like if you told me you're confident in how to project this, I'm pretty sure I could just make a convincing argument against you no matter what your position was. My personal assumption here is that it's going to be split, and the reason for that is one, Hampton missed a bunch of time, and two, Vidal played really well. And also, but even here, like there's two kind of competing. We've at plenty of times in the past, you've had the Chargers be like, oh yeah, we're going to split carries. And then they just feed running back one. But like early in the year, it did seem like they were going to have a legit timeshare between Najee and Hampton. So it doesn't seem like they're opposed to it. But again, like first week back, Vidal's played well. I think it's likely that they split. But then the second part of this that is difficult, and I'm really having a hard time figuring out like how to handle it, is my projection for the number of carries that Hampton gets is in line with the market, which again, I don't put a lot of stock in that because they've been wrong on this kind of stuff all year long. But it does, I'm obviously not like out of my mind. I'm projecting in the same way that like everybody is, but there's not a rushing attempts line that I've seen for Vidal. And the projection I have on Vidal right now is higher than I've seen anywhere else. But for it to be lower, I would either have to be way above market on Hampton carries or lower, just have more passes for the Chargers, but I'm already over market on Chargers passing attempts by like 1 or 1.5. So it's kind of like, okay, where is all of this like extra stuff going if Hampton's going to get like 11.5, 12 carries, but Vidal's not going to get like a 50-50 split? Like, where are these other rush attempts going if not Vidal? So that's where it's really tricky right now. And as a result, like, I'm just over the field on Vidal. But you could obviously make the case that like you just think Hampton comes back and has a bigger workload. Maybe he does. Maybe that's why they gave him the extra week. As they wanted to do that. So I think there's a lot of different ways that it could go. I just tend to kind of err on the side of a timeshare when somebody comes back. I was pissed at myself I projected more of a timeshare for Henderson Stevenson than other places did, but I still didn't project like a true one in Stevenson in that return. So here it's, I don't know, I'm leaning towards timeshare, but like it doesn't have to be.
I'm so mad that I did not win anything on that slate. Like, I had so many sweats, if I forget who they're playing, but if on the final drive, the non-Patriots offense just did like anything, I had like a million different sweats. So I was like, all right, if this goes, I can win this tournament. If this goes, I can win this tournament. And ended up, they just didn't like do any. Oh, it was the Giants. Devin Singletary, who was like, I had a lot of Devin Singletary, but he was already in the winning lineup. I needed it to go to like Slayton or Wandale or anything. And I did not win anything on that slate, despite being well over the field on both Ramondre and Singletary. That was a bummer.
But even that, like, if you take the Stevenson Henderson thing, like, and apply it to here, like, obviously it's not apples to apples because neither one of these guys are, like the dusty veteran. It's the guy that was a rookie sleeper last year and did nothing, now stepping into a bigger role. But like, you had Stevenson in that first game back clearly not play as much as the Patriots wanted him to play, and then the second game back he went back to his like normal role.
Right.
So even that, if you take that logic, it would apply to like, even if by week 17 Hampton is the guy here, this week it could very easily just still be a timeshare, or even Vidal is the lead guy.
Yeah, and to answer your question, Trey Lance can get those carries. That's the other person.
I was actually thinking that earlier. Like, what if, like, so what are we going to do? 4 carries for Herbert, 6 for Lance, 6 for Vidal, and 11 for Hampton?
Could be really gross.
Yeah.
Let me read the quote from November 26th, offensive coordinator Greg Roman on what workload plan will be for Omarion Hampton and Kamani Vidal when Hampton returns. He said, "We'll play that one by ear. Feel really good about both of them. I feel like Kamani stepped in and helped the team a lot in a lot of different ways. So kudos to him. Really excited about what he's been able to do for us and what he'll do for us moving forward. I'm sure you'll see some kind of 1-2 punch there. We'll see how it divvies out." And this is the quote that stands out to me. "I doubt that Omarion Hampton will get his Denver workload right away," is what he said. So to me, it's like, all right, so they're not planning on just giving him all of the work in this game. It's still like, to me, the general vibe of that quote to me is like, yeah, it's going to be Omarion Hampton. Like, Omarion Hampton is our guy, but probably not right away is my takeaway from that quote.
Yeah. And again, I will follow up with Greg Roman lies constantly when asked about this. He always says it's going to be some sort of split. And then normally he gives somebody all the carries. But in the past, it's been more so of like, this guy is out. How are you going to handle that? And it's like, next guy up, we're going to have some sort of a timeshare between the backup and the backup's backup. And then it's just like, no, J.K. Dobbins got all the carries.
Yeah. And this year, it was the same thing when Najee Harris went down. It was like, yeah, we'll have some sort of split, which honestly, the quote from this year, I never took it as like, oh, it's going to be a timeshare. It's like, yeah, we'll have multiple backs getting carries. I saw a lot of people like victory lapping on Twitter, like, oh, see, it's still not Omarion Hampton. I don't think it was you, by the way. I think it was somebody else victory lapping, like, Omarion Hampton's still not, he's still splitting work. See, you guys are idiots. Yeah. And I was like, that is not what the quote said at all. He said, like, yeah, we'll have some sort of a split, which is like, yes, every single backfield or almost every backfield in the NFL has some kind of a split. Anyway, as noted by Einsteinium, if they split, that price tag seems high, which is the exact opposite of what Wesley Maxwell said, which is just play them both. I think I tend to side on those price tags seem a little bit high if they are splitting like 50-50, but like you said, there's a lot of volatility here. I think ultimately it's just going to be really ownership sensitive. Like what the Sims give you is going to like be so sensitive to any changes you make in ownership, I would think, because neither of them projects really well point per dollar, but like they project well enough that if ownership is really low, they're going to pop in the Sims. So it's kind of a big, I don't know yet. I think it depends on where the ownership ends up. I guess we can see in the flex rate and captain rate. So the middle columns here, you can kind of see like what the like efficient ownership. I mean, sort of, you can make the argument that's like approximately efficient ownership, oversimplifying things, of course. So yeah, I don't know. Looks like about 30% overall is efficient ownership for each of them. Anything else to say on Vidal versus Hampton, or do you have any interest in Scott Matlock?
So I was going to make the same point you just did, where, like, yeah, neither of the prices are super appealing if it's timeshare, but I think I would actually argue that you either play both of them. If you think it's going to be a timeshare, you should be playing both of them. Or if you think one of them is not a timeshare, then obviously just like jam whichever one you think is going to play. Because right now, like, I did project it as almost 50-50. And Hampton is still optimal 26% of the time, and so is Vidal at flex, and then another like 4% a piece of captain. So, like you said, around 30% optimal rate for both of them if you project it as a timeshare. Again, the other assumption that has to hold there is that they run the amount that's being projected. But I didn't have any sort of like crazy, super high rush rate or anything like that outside of like what's normal. So the only assumption, there is a pretty high Chargers play projection. They've been a team that for the season has run an above average number of plays. Over their last 5, they're at like 58 per game. For the season, they're at 61, 62. The Eagles defense allows a lot of plays per game, both for the season and last 5. So there is a relatively high play projection on the Chargers. So you could, like if you're using Run the Sims, you could just lower their plays if you wanted. But like assuming everything else holds, I think that if it's a timeshare, they're both just guys you should be playing, a decent amount of, sort of just like that last piece in where it's like, there's guys I like more, but I can still afford somebody in this 7 to 8K range. If you have a lean on who it's going to be, then they're underpriced, whichever one, is going to get the bulk of the work.
When you say play them both, how often would you be inclined to play them both in the same lineup?
Let me look.
I think that's the trickier question, because it's like, if they're really just getting like 11 carries a piece, like they're a little bit too expensive for that role, assuming they're not getting like 6 targets, which I wouldn't guess they are. So slightly too expensive if they are like truly splitting. But if you project it as a split, like there's obviously room for more on either side. But
I have in the same lineup a decent amount.
Do you really? Okay.
But again, part of that probably has to do with the fact that there's no ownership coming into Vidal.
Right.
So it offsets a lot of the projection that you're giving up.
Yep.
Once you increase that ownership number, I would assume it goes away. Because, ideally, I don't have them in the same lineup.
Right.
But basically, basically what it's telling me right now is if they each get 10, 11 carries, they'll do well enough together that it's worth having 2% on Monty Vidal.
Yeah. And it's like there's not a lot to love on this slate, and especially there's not a ton of value. Like that's kind of one of my bigger takeaways looking through the slate, is like there aren't any like great 1,000 or under plays. So I do think like these mid-range values become a lot more appealing on a slate like this, just given the lack of value. So that kind of benefits both of them. As far as the matchups go, I have not looked at that. I think it's kind of slightly bad matchups for both, but let me actually look. So over the past 5 weeks, actually a slightly above average matchup for Chargers running backs against the Eagles in terms of schedule adjusted over the past 5 weeks, slightly below average for running backs against the Chargers over the past 5 weeks. Neither is really standing out as like super bad or super good. They're kind of neutral matchups. Anything else on running backs?
Chargers have given it up on the ground over the last 5. They just not through the air.
Yeah, that's true.
But no, nothing else. Steven said, do you think any garbage time, maybe more of a lean to Vidal? I would assume so. The follow-up comment was it's a 2.5 point spread. What garbage time? There's still a non-zero chance that this game will blow out. It's just a much lower chance than if it were a 14-point spread. But I would assume that any non-competitive, if it goes to one of the two, I would assume it's Vidal.
Spelkowski says Jalen Carter out. Said I think Reeves had some good stats with Carter. So this is where I would often look. This is where I would look at PFF grades. Like I think Jalen Carter is really good against the run. I know that like the first game of the season when he spit on somebody before the game started, Javonte Williams had spit on Dak. Javonte Williams had a huge game. Like it's my impression that Jalen Carter is really good against the run.
Offense had a big game.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it should benefit the entire offense. That's a good point. So all of these numbers may be inflated for, for a game, or sorry, the defense looks a lot worse with Jalen Carter off the field. So, theoretically a better matchup for all of the Chargers. It's a good note from Spelkowski. Anything else on running backs?
No.
All right, wide receivers. So to me, whenever I get an Eagles game, the first thing I want to look at is man versus zone, and the Chargers do play a ton of zone. They play man at the second lowest rate in the league, which makes Devonta Smith really appealing to me at 8,400, especially on a slate where we're already kind of trying to attack the mid-range. As far as the Sims, they are giving me right about even with the field. He's projected for 33% flex, 9% captain ownership. I'm getting to 33% flex, 10% captain. So slightly over the field on Devonta Smith, which I'm happy with that. I probably want even more. I like Devonta Smith at this price tag. And I also think we're, often kind of splitting hairs. Like we had the same thing another week where I really leaned on one of them for the matchup, and then it was the other one that went off. Like it's not that predictable, but does seem to be a Devonta Smith matchup. AJ Brown, 9,000 projected for 41 and 10. Here I am getting way under the field on AJ Brown. Are you getting the same thing with Devonta Smith slightly over the field, AJ Brown under the field?
Yeah, the baseline projection for them was like almost identical, which has been the case for a lot of the season. I did bump target share for Devonta Smith a bit because of how often the Chargers are playing zone, like 78% of the time. Don't want to go too crazy with that. Like you said, it's one data point. It's one of those where like I've talked about it before too, where it's like I find it interesting, and sometimes I'll pay more attention to it than others, but it's still extremely noisy, and
yeah.
I don't buy into the idea that like you should be making DFS plays across the board based on like coverage types.
Easier on a showdown slate, like it's slightly more.
And the thing that I actually really like here, and the reason I always look at this one specifically, is that you have one receiver who excels in one, and you have one receiver who excels in the other, and is like actively worse.
Yeah.
So it's not because like the reason it's so noisy is like you still have to account for talent and all this other stuff. Overall quality of the defense, like you don't want to on a classic slate, you don't want to say, oh, I'm not playing AJ Brown because this team plays a lot of zone, when like it's a team that they play zone, but they suck at it. They can't defend anybody. But here you have like a lot more apples to apples when you're talking about Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. They're both very good receivers. Obviously, all of their passes all year have come from the same quarterback. And you get one guy that takes a step back, one guy that takes a step up. So again, like it's not to say that like AJ Brown can't have a good game or Devonta Smith has to, but I do with the Eagles specifically find myself when you get a team that either very heavily plays man or very heavily plays zone, I will bump the corresponding receiver. So we do have a slightly higher projection on Devonta Smith here. I'm still getting to both of them, but I do have more Devonta Smith, which, again, it's not like it's a tough sell either. It's not like you're saying, oh, AJ Brown's been like the clear wide receiver one this year, but because the Chargers play zone, I think Devonta Smith's better. Like Devonta Smith has been better for a large portion of the season anyway. So yeah, like obviously they're both good receivers. They both have high ceilings. I do have more Devonta Smith at the slightly lower price tag and that slightly lower ownership.
And again, like it just comes down to the dynamics of the slate too. It's like the price difference actually matters because we don't have much great value, like 8,400 for Devonta Smith versus 9,000 for AJ Brown. It's not a ton, but like it matters a little bit because we're really tight on the pricing on this slate. So I think it's worth factoring in.
And a couple other things I'd point out too, like ownership matters. If ownership were projected, if you're, obviously it's not going to be the case, but like at the extreme, if like you just know that every single person you're playing against is very, very interested in coverage data, and like Devonta Smith's going to be 80% and AJ Brown's going to be 10, I would say like, yeah, I don't give a shit at all about coverage data. I'm going to play all the AJ Brown, but like obviously that's not going to be the case. So right now there's a higher ownership projection on AJ Brown, and there are things about the matchup that make you kind of lean toward Devonta Smith. One other point that I'll make, and I always like am hesitant to look at this kind of stuff too. But Steven said rarely do they both go off in the same game. Keep in mind that the Eagles, when they have their way, don't throw the ball a lot. So it's not necessarily that they don't go off for any reason other than if AJ Brown goes off in the first quarter, the Eagles have a good defense. They want to run the ball. AJ Brown goes off in the first quarter, they're probably playing from ahead and having their way just running the ball at that point. So there is the whole, like, it's not that they necessarily can't go off. Like if AJ Brown goes off in the first quarter and the Chargers keep up, there's no reason Devonta Smith can't have a good second or third quarter.
Yeah. I think that is a good note. I pulled up because I saw his comment. This is weekly fantasy points scored, so we can just look through. And week 3, obviously 22.9 for AJ Brown, 20 for Devonta Smith. That looks like a good game for both of them. We don't have a ton. Week 7, 28.1 for AJ Brown, 33.3 for Devonta Smith. We'd take that all day. And then week 12, I would say 25 for AJ Brown, 14.9 for Devonta Smith. So we do have at least 3 games here that I'm like, I think those are all games. Like if you told me that those are their fantasy point scores tonight, I would probably play both of them in every lineup.
I'm pretty sure there was a Eagles onslaught week on main slate at some point this year.
Yeah, so it might not happen all that often, but it
maybe I just played it and it didn't work. I don't remember.
Yeah, but like I mean, it could have been this week where they both scored 22, or week 7 where it's 28 and 33. Like I'm guessing.
I think that's what it was. I think I remember it because it's a week that like the Eagles. I think it's the Eagles like mega stacks have shown up for me a ton this year, and I didn't play it like the week that it actually won.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That adds up. Like I don't think
Kenny picked it on the Raiders. That's right.
Yeah. Kenny picked it on the Raiders. Yep. Yeah, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's wrong. He used to be on the Steelers.
I knew he wasn't on the Steelers. I knew he wasn't on the Browns. I couldn't remember where he was.
He did come in right for Geno Smith this week. I'm pretty sure.
I wasn't paying attention at that point, but yeah, probably.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, Devonta Smith to me is kind of a priority on this slate, but like you said, that is also extremely ownership dependent. Like we have the one data point of zone versus man, but it is like the difference between them and another defense that's like middle in terms of like man versus zone is probably like 3 plays, like based on the percentage of the time they play and the number of plays run. It's not like it's that big of a difference, but it is enough to like, it's to me, it's one more point.
I can tell you that the bump that I put on Devonta Smith's target share essentially moved each of them a half point, give or take, in median projection. So you ended up with a gap of like 0.9 in median projection when they were the same. They each had with the baseline. So the DraftKings prop line, receiving line for Smith, I think is 56.5. For AJ Brown, it's 60.5. I actually had them both at 58. Just with like their baseline stuff. And then when I gave the bump to Devonta Smith, it got Smith to 62, it got Brown to 56. So basically it moved Devonta Smith to AJ Brown's prop line and AJ Brown to Devonta Smith's prop line.
So easy game, just to pick 6, you take the over on Devonta Smith, the under on AJ Brown. Easiest game. Beyond, that's a joke, but you could. Beyond those two, Jahan Dotson is the funniest receiver in the NFL to me. 3,000 salary, 3% projected flex ownership. I am getting to 4%. I actually, I assume that we are still seeing him run a ton of routes.
Like 65%.
Yeah, 65% of routes. And again, just looking through his game log of fantasy points. Like this is one of those things like it's like, yeah, but he can't. He's on the field enough. I always make the case if they're on the field enough, a broken play can go in his way. Literally his only games where he's had like strong fantasy production have been with AJ Brown out. Like even week 1, I think AJ Brown must have gotten hurt because he only scored 1.8. Jahan Dotson put up 8.9. Week 8, we have AJ Brown out. He puts up 11. Like he just doesn't do anything with Devonta Smith and AJ Brown out there to justify a $3,000 price tag. But still, there could be a broken play. Jahan Dotson suddenly scores a touchdown and he's a player you need. So I think it makes sense to be slightly over the field there. Do you have any Jahan Dotson takes?
No, he sucks. I hate him because Washington should have drafted anybody else. I'm getting 2% right now. He's getting 3% ownership at 3K. He'll be out there. He can catch a touchdown. He's maybe going to get targeted like once.
Yeah.
Twice, maybe.
Yep. He's like the backup tight end who's just, except for that he's on the field all the time. Like the backup tight end, typically it's like they run 10% of routes, but he could score a touchdown. Jahan Dotson, it's like he runs 70% of routes, and he, I guess, maybe could score a touchdown at some point. I don't know, kind of a meme, but I think he's playable at 3% ownership. Darius Cooper, 1,000 projected for 5.5% ownership. I'm getting to 8.3% looking at the route participation for Darius Cooper, up to 29% in week 13. So that is his second highest of the season. There's a case for Darius Cooper. Maybe they at some point just play him ahead of Jahan Dotson because Jahan Dotson's not doing anything. I don't know. How much interest do you have in Darius Cooper?
I have some, like I have 6%, and I kind of mentioned it earlier. I think this is one spot that is actually interesting because he's been hurt most of the year. He ran 16% of routes in week 12. He ran 35% last week, again, using different data, but same trend. And you saw last week where Goddard went from 93% the week before to 85%. Calcaterra went from 21% to like 6%. So you just saw less routes going to the tight ends as a whole. Obviously, you expect Goddard to still run the vast majority of the routes at tight end. So maybe you're just going to get a little bit less Goddard on the field, but less Calcaterra on the field, less Granson on the field, more wide receiver 4, whereas the Eagles just haven't used a wide receiver 4 all season long. So you're not expecting a lot of production or anything, but at 1K on a slate where there's not a lot of value, he's similarly priced to Calcaterra, who's low owned, and I have 1% of. So I do think that mixing in some Cooper is fine. I certainly don't want to just like go play 50% or anything because that route participation could go down. It could, I guess, go up. The bull case, would be, he takes some of Dawson's routes and, the tight ends really play less or something. But like mostly, I think he's probably, you're hoping if you play him, you're hoping he runs 30% again. From a projection standpoint, I assume like 20 to 25% is your average.
Yep. But even like you using your numbers, which I assume are in that 20 to 25% range, I got to 8%. So over the field there, looks like a strong GPP play. Charger side, the Eagles, I don't think have a big man versus zone split. I looked at it briefly, but so I don't think we have to look that closely at it. We can look at the wide receiver coverage matchup, I guess. Let me pull that up to see if anybody pops in the wide receiver coverage matchup for the Chargers. But the routes have been, pretty much just the big three, and then Trey Harris runs some. Yeah, it looks like a positive coverage grade for Keenan Allen, neutral for Ladd McConkey, slightly negative for Quentin Johnson, pretty negative for Oronde Gadsden. Looking at the routes, we have QJ is right around 80%. Ladd McConkey still leading the team in route participation. Keenan Allen, I didn't notice this, actually up to 82% in week 13 following their bye. He had been like kind of down, 50% up to 60, and now all the way up to 82%. I'm not sure if I missed a reason for that happening. Trey Harris at 39%, Oronde Gadsden down now, so he was actually back down to 68%. That's all interesting. Looking at the ownership and the price tags, Keenan Allen 6,600. I guess let's start with Ladd McConkey because he's the most expensive. 8,800 projected for 35% flex, 5% captain ownership. I only got to 11% in the flex and 1% at captain using those ownership numbers on Ladd. Are you also well into the field there?
Yeah, I think it's just that he has a lot of ownership coming in. We have 22% optimal rate at flex at 8,800. Like that's a relatively high price tag. Obviously, he is very good. But also, I mean, if he wanted to, and I tend to not care too much with the Chargers because they do move their wide receivers around a bit. But like Ladd McConkey has the highest slot route participation on the team at 63%. If you look at last 5 games, or I think even for the full season at wide receivers against the Eagles, it's been, you can live with the outside guys. They get shut down in the slot. Again, like McConkey's still going to run a third of his routes on the outside, but from a matchup standpoint, it's not been good. McConkey's still good. Herbert's still good. So again, you can only care so much, but there is that. And then again, it's just, you get, there are so many mouths to feed here that there is, even if you want to argue that McConkey is the wide receiver 1, like Keenan Allen ran more routes last week. Gadsden has been a relatively high target guy overall this season. Quentin Johnson is obviously still there. So I think McConkey clearly is a good player, and it's not like he's a bad play, quote unquote, but I would rather have Devontae Smith at similar ownership. I'm getting to more AJ Brown at a similar price tag and similar ownership. Part of it has to do, I think, with I am getting Keenan Allen like around the field at 29%, but yeah, I'm just not getting to much Vlad McConkey right now.
Yeah, it's a good note on the how much slot he runs, because he is running 62.5% in the slot, and as noted, that is the worst possible matchup for slot receivers over the past 5 weeks against the Eagles. Really, really tough one there. With, I think, Cooper DeJean maybe covers. Actually, I can look at the wide receiver coverage matchup. Who is the slot corner? Yeah, it is Cooper DeJean is the slot corner for.
It's a very white matchup here.
Very white, yeah. We have Keenan Allen is on, or Quinion Mitchell is on Keenan Allen, I should say, and then Odori Jackson on Quentin Johnston is what fantasy points is projected for. So yeah, tough matchup for Lad. I don't think I'd be comfortable with the 12% that I'm getting right now. I probably do boost that some, but like, yeah, I think it makes sense to be under the field if he's getting chalk. If he's
and I do think to your point about bumping him, I do think the Chargers are just one of those teams where if there is somebody you just want more of from like a portfolio standpoint, you can pretty easily make the case, just because it's been such a weird season where like McConkey just wasn't getting targets for a quarter of the season, and then he did start getting a bunch of targets. Gadsden, has had games where he gets a ton of targets and then he doesn't. Keenan Allen was like wide receiver 1 alongside Quentin Johnston at one point, and then they both just like died. So I very much think, like, a lot of times I'll look at stuff where it's just like, oh man, I'm nervous that I don't have more McConkey, but I'm very confident in my projection and inputs, and it is what it is. With the Chargers pass catchers, if there's any of that main group that you're just like, for whatever reason, I think he actually is a little bit better here, I would be pretty quick to just like bump target share and get to more.
Yeah, agreed. All right. So beyond Lad, we have QJ, and I mean that point can be applied to any of these receivers, but currently QJ projected for 11-1. I'm getting to 18-4, so kind of not really far over the field on QJ, but like enough over that I'd be happy with that. Keenan Allen projected for 27-2. He's only 6,600. I'm getting to 30-11 of Keenan Allen. Those are the kind of big three, and then I think we can talk about Trey Harris after it, and Darius Davis as kind of their own things. Are you also getting to a little bit above the field on QJ and well above the field on Keenan Allen at captain in particular?
So I'm pretty close to the field overall on Allen, but I do have 8% at captain, where he's only projected for 2% ownership. I'm slightly above the field on QJ, 17% at flex, 4 at captain. Again, it's not with like any confidence that like this is a Quentin Johnston spot or Keenan Allen spot. Keenan Allen does spend the second most time in the slot. So everything we said about McConkey does apply to Allen. It's just that their rates are basically flipped. But the thing about Allen is that he did, the last 2 weeks, he has run more routes. You had like a 3-week down period where he was at 50 to 60%. Then he was 75% before the bye, 82% coming out of the bye. Tucker Fisk is out. He ran 25% of routes last week, was a season high for him. So that probably means less to tight end. I assume it means more routes in general for Gadsden, but and to a much lesser extent for Conklin, but it's one less tight end for them to use. So that maybe makes Allen a little bit safer as well, as far as just being on the field.
Yep. Yeah, I like that. Seems like a strong play. Did you say how much you're getting QJ?
Like 17 at flex and 4 at captain.
All right, so fairly similar in our exposures on QJ and Allen. Yeah, and just looking at like the past 4 weeks, for anybody curious, 22 targets for Ladd McConkey on 75% route participation, 19 for Keenan Allen on 63%, 18 for Gadsden on 68%, 18 for QJ on 84%. So in terms of the targets, they're all within 4 of each other over the past 4 weeks. But to as Adam noted, like we saw a big jump for Ladd McConkey, for Keenan Allen, up to 82% route participation in week 13. So looking at the 4-game sample, and we get back to when he was still running around like 50% for a brief period, he might be trending up, I guess. It's been kind of inconsistent, sort of all over the place. QJ kind of consistently in that 80%-ish route participation range recently. I don't know. They all seem, it's tough to find a real priority. I think it's going to be largely based on ownership. But I think you made a good point about slot being such a tough spot that maybe that does slightly, for me, it would slightly bump up QJ, slightly bump down Ladd. Keenan as well as Ladd. And then Trey Harris, we also see 50% route participation in week 11, down to 39%. So we didn't get that post-bye rookie bump that you might have been hoping for with Trey Harris, kind of bumped down, but still like better than his season average with 39% in week 13. Again, over the past 4 weeks, 9 targets for Trey Harris. I think he's had at least one in the end zone. That's also something that I like to look at. Let's see. End zone targets on the Chargers. I mean, the most we've had is 2 for QJ, 2 for Ladd McConkey, none for Trey Harris, 1 inside the 20. How much are you getting to of Trey Harris?
Like 6%. I don't have any confidence in him. Like, he's clearly the wide receiver 4. He should run around 40% of routes. He's at 0.14 targets per route run for the season. So he's not somebody that when he is on the field, he's doing a great job of earning targets. That being said, he shouldn't be 1% owned or whatever he's projected at. Even if you call it 3%, I think he's a good enough play on a slate where we don't have a lot of cheap receivers. I would say he's essentially Jahan Dotson, probably a more talented Jahan Dotson, maybe. We'll find out, I guess. But similar in that you can feel pretty confident in the amount he's going to be on the field, somewhere being, in his case, in that like 40, maybe 50% range, but probably closer to the 40 end. And that he probably won't be very heavily targeted when he's out there. He probably will be targeted more frequently on a per route basis than Dotson. But Dotson, obviously, you're expecting to run more routes. So I think he's basically the Chargers version of Dotson from a showdown standpoint.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I think I like him better than Dotson. I think, which is kind of funny, even running fewer routes.
Like anybody better than Dotson.
Yeah, true. And he's also projected for lower ownership here. I'm also getting to about 6%. I like this comment. AFC Angelo says, "Do you think Herbert is required with his wide receiver at captain? I feel like QJ might be yes. The others no." Like, I think that's on the right track. Like, I think the reasoning is good, that it's like with the others, they can get there via PPR, like just getting a lot of receptions. Whereas QJ, it's more like when he has a really big game, it's typically going to bring along Justin Herbert, because it's usually on lower volume but longer plays, which benefits the quarterback more. I still think the answer is just no overall. Yeah. You don't need the quarterback.
Yeah, I agree with the thought process. And like, obviously, again, most of the time you're going to have Herbert just because. But yeah, I still think the answer would just be no, because Quentin Johnston can still, like, let's say he catches 4 passes for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, there's a good chance he's captain. Herbert threw 2 touchdowns in that case, but doesn't have to be in the winning lineup when you have Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, all on the slate, kickers, defenses. Like, I wouldn't force it anyway, but I do agree that, like, McConkey has an easier path to captain without Herbert. But I guess, like, even there, you can kind of counter it with, like, McConkey's more expensive. So McConkey probably still needs to be getting into the end zone to be the optimal captain. Right. But really, I just think the answer would be no.
Yeah. And also, like, you can get to the 100-yard bonus for QJ without,
right.
That it's only 100 yards for Justin Herbert, which is only a third of the way to the bonus. Like, there's just a lot that, like, so much easier to score as a receiver than it is as a quarterback. That I
think Justin Herbert can score 18 points and on a slate against, like, all the stars on this Eagles team, not be optimal, or 16 points or whatever, and Quentin Johnston can solve a big game.
Yep. AFC Angel, yes, I would say the opposite side is also true. You can play them in the captain spot without the quarterback. I think kind of the same argument. It's just easier for them to score points without the quarterback.
Yep.
Any other, let's see, Darius Davis. I'm getting to 3% at 1.6% ownership. I haven't even looked at his 0% of routes in week 13, but he was at 16% in week 11. Certainly could get back there. I don't know. I don't have any thoughts on Darius. He's just like you're hoping for something weird to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I have 2% at 2% owned.
Yeah, no real takes there. Okay, let's move on to tight ends.
Like, you're hoping for a kick return is what you're hoping for, I think.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Which is 6 points, which I guess is probably enough at his price tag, especially on a slate with no value. Like that actually, I guess we do have a point there that, like, there's no value on this slate. So, like, on some weeks you get 6 points for a kick return, and that's not enough. Like we saw that with Kyle Williams, scored 10, 11 fantasy points, had that after we both talked about, like, yeah, you don't want to go to, why would you go to Kyle Williams? He scored that, like, 40-yard touchdown, but he was still not in the winning lineup, because it's like on that slate there were so many other high scores you didn't want it. This is a slate where that, a 200 guy scoring 6 points is probably enough that, like, it allows you to get to all the expensive players. That might be something that you want. So I guess that would be the one point to make on the really cheap guys that are probably not going to do anything. Like just doing something is really beneficial on this slate. Wait, what? No value isn't the whole slate free? What do you mean by that? No, there's no value on this. Would you agree with me that there's like very
I
little?
agree with both of you.
Okay.
There's not a lot of cheap value, but like there's everybody on the slate is kind of underpriced. Like Saquon is sub 10K. Goddard is 5,400. Gadsden is 5,800. McConkey's 8,800. Like it's easy to make good lineups, but yeah, there's not value in the sense of punt plays.
Okay. Yeah. I guess it's all dependent on. Yeah. I mean the punt plays. Like there's no like punt plays you can have any kind of confidence in. But yeah, I guess that is true that we do have a lot of like pretty good prices on the pay ups. Okay.
It's like NBA, like not this year because DraftKings has fixed it and done well, but like in the past they would make like Jokic 11-8, and it's just like when everybody says value, they're talking about like the 3K backup point guard, but really like Nikola Jokic is the best value on the slate.
Right. You like sort by point per dollar, and it's like Nikola Jokic is the best value on the slate. Yeah. Okay. Tight end. Here is a couple more like mid-range. They're pretty good point per dollar. At least they're not the $7,000 Zach Ertz or whatever he was. Oronde Gadsden is 5,800 projected for 40% flex ownership, 7% captain ownership. I'm getting to 16 at flex, 1% at captain. So well under the field currently on Oronde Gadsden. Again, if we look at schedule adjusted, I don't think we have anything great popping for the tight ends in terms of the matchups. Yeah, it is a bottom 10 matchup for Dallas Goedert, and it is a bottom 11, 12 or whatever for Oronde Gadsden. Not slightly negative, not like enough to scare you off him. Gadsden, as noted, is still running a fair number of routes, but it has dipped down to 68% in week 13. So if he is chalky, I'm happy to be under the field on Oronde Gadsden. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, but I think it has to do with the ownership. Like I'm guessing that these are two guys that lose some ownership when Kamani Vidal's ownership increases. They have very similar optimal rates at 25% to like the Chargers running backs. So I'm guessing that that's kind of what's happening here is I'm getting to like 22% Goddard, 17% Gadsden. So I'm playing them pretty close to their optimal rate, a little bit below it. But I think you'll see that ownership come down as the day goes on. And then I'll probably end up, around the field on both of them. There's nothing that really stands out here. Like Gadsden, I do think you saw the routes come down last week, but in general, he's been clearly, the wide receiver or tight end one in terms of running routes. You are missing Fisk this week, who ran 25% last week. I assume that means that Disley will not be a healthy scratch and he'll be active, but how much are they going to use him when clearly like they've been healthy scratching him for weeks? So I do think there's a pretty decent chance that you get Gadsden back up. He ran 91% routes the week before the bye. I think it's likely he lands in like that 80% range, give or take. So I think both tight ends look good. It's just a matter of where does their ownership actually end up coming in?
Yeah. Looking at a comparison of usage for those two tight ends, because I do think this will be a decision point for a lot of people between Goddard and Gadsden being $400 apart, both looking like extreme chalk. Like you said, I think the number comes down on the ownership here. But just if you want to compare the usage over the past 4 weeks for Dallas Goedert, it's 17 targets on 83% route participation. And for Gadsden, it is 18 targets on 68% route participation. So not a lot separating them in terms of usage. Maybe you could make the argument that Gadsden is more likely to see a big bump, because we could see the route participation bump back up, but it's been pretty even in terms of the usage for those two. Again, going to be very dependent on the ownership, which will change before lock. By the way, I will be doing another show before lock with updated ownership and updated thoughts on what we see as ownership progresses throughout the day with any kind of injury news, which I don't think we're really waiting on any kind of injury news, but maybe we hear a rumor on actually they're going to use Trey Lance more than expected or something between now and then. So if you want more updated information, I could potentially have some before lock. I'll be going live again.
I assume the most likely updated information you have is what the hell they're doing at running back.
True. That does seem more likely than Trey Lance. Maybe they give us some kind of a rumbling on, hey, it's actually Omarion Hampton feels great and he's going to be the lead back. I don't know. We'll probably get something between now and then, or possibly get something. beyond Gadsden and Goddard. Tyler Conklin is 1,600. I'm not getting really to any of Conklin, Calcaterra, or Granson. 0.3% Conklin, 1.3% Calcaterra, 1% Kylan Granson. None of them, I think, have much of a role. Looking at the Chargers, let's see. I mean, with Fisk out, do you think maybe we could see a bump to Conklin, I guess?
Yeah, I expect him to run more routes than he has been. That being said, I still don't have him at 1,600. I have 1% Calcaterra. Mentioned that though when we talked about and like 0.5% Granson, which is like one lineup. But mentioned that we saw the Eagles backup tight ends lose routes last week with Darius Cooper running more. So yeah, I mean I think these guys are all pretty much the same. Where like Conklin could be on the field a bit more without Fisk, or they just give more to Gadsden and don't use two tight ends.
Yeah.
I assume Bisley's going to be active, which maybe he runs routes ahead of Conklin. I doubt it, but. Yeah, I think like Conklin and Calcaterra are interchangeable, basically.
Yep, I think I agree with that. You're just they're the classic backup tight end where you're hoping for something weird, hoping for a reception to separate you from the field, not having much of roles there. Defenses and kickers. I'm getting to a fair amount. I'm getting so Dicker is 5,000 projected for 26% total ownership with 1% at captain. I'm getting to 25% with none at captain. Jake Elliott 4,800 projected for 25 and 1. I'm getting to 27 and 0. Eagles 4,400 projected for 35 and 1. I'm getting to 17 and 0.3. Chargers 3,600 projected for 25 and 1. I'm getting to 27 and 2. I don't have any great takes here. Do you like the Eagles defense less because Jalen Carter is out? Do you have any great takes on kickers and defenses?
Yeah, I do like the Eagles defense less because Jalen Carter's out.
Yeah.
But no, I don't. I mean, it's still just their defenses. I'm the same as you. I have 17% Eagles, 26 Chargers. Kickers, I'm very flat, like 28 Elliott, 25 Dicker. I don't have any stands at kicker or defense really. Although I guess with the way it's projected right now, I technically have a stand under the field on the Eagles, but that probably will just come down a bit too. As far as the projected ownership goes. So there's nothing that really stands out other than, as a reminder, like Jalen Carter makes a big difference.
Yeah. All right. I think that probably does it for this show. Adam, are you doing an NBA show today? Anything else you want to shout out?
Yeah, going to do an NBA show at like 4-ish on the Run the Sims channel.
Okay, check out. Make sure you are subscribed to the Run the Sims live channel for Adam's NBA at 4 Eastern, 3 Central. I will again be back before lock, breaking things down. And a reminder, Adam and I will not be doing shows together this Thursday or Monday. Adam will be doing solo shows. That'll be the only show for the Showdown, I think, on the channel on both Monday and both this Thursday and the following Monday. Don't know what I'm doing yet for the Sunday Night Football slate, but just know that things are going to be looking a little bit different this week because, again, I am going to be traveling. All right, that's going to do it for the show. I'll be back live tonight. Sign up for Run the Sims if you want to sign up. If you haven't checked it out, you can use promo code Neil for 50% off your first payment on any NFL product at Run the Sims. That's it. I'll see you guys later. Thanks. Good luck.